Good day and welcome to the BIMForum webinar. Thanks for joining us. We feel we have a topic that is pertinent with what is going on with technology these days. We will be discussing artificial intelligence in design and construction. My name is David Francis. I've been involved with the BIMForum since 2010. I've served as a member of the LOD committee and as a BIMForum MEP chairperson. Currently, I'm very fortunate to work for a great general contractor based in California named Dome Construction. My co-host today is Stuart Carroll. Stuart?
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be working with David and our panelists today. I'm the president at Beck Technology and have been in the technology space servicing pre-construction for the last 30 years. But before we introduce our panelists, I wanted to quickly frame the purpose of today's webinar. While AI and machine learning are not new, they are new to AEC. AI is getting a lot of attention, and it feels like everyone is speaking about it, and tools like ChatGPT are now part of everybody's lexicon. Everyone on the planet is impacted by our industry, AEC. Every one of us lives, works, or plays in buildings and projects that our industry designs, engineers, builds, and operates. We literally do make the world a better place. Despite its impact, our industry is slow to adapt new technologies and slow to change, which provides a huge opportunity for tools like AI to seek improvement. During today's panel discussion, we're going to discuss why AI and why now. How do we trust AI? We're going to explore some use cases where AI has been used, and then we'll end with some discussion around lessons learned when implementing AI. David?
Perfect. So one piece of business we want you to be aware of, this webinar does qualify for AIA credits. So the webinar will be eligible for one learning unit from AIA. The other piece to the puzzle we want you to understand is this webinar will be recorded and it'll be shared on the bimforum.org website as all past and future webinars have been. So please make sure you go check this site out. So at this point, let's introduce our 6 panelists for today's webinar. We have 3 vendors and 3 industry experts to discuss our topic. Here are our 3 experts. The first introduction goes to Anthony Hawk of Hyper.io. Anthony?
Yeah, thanks a lot, David. Hi, folks. Just a little information about Hyper and me. I'm going to share my screen here. And so like many of the folks who usually attend these kind of webinars, I started life out in architecture way back when. Took a turn through a few years of construction, doing millwork subcontracting during the recession in the early 90s. And after that, kind of returned to my first love, architecture at Einhorn Naffey Prescott. I was their IT director and a principal there, and really got interested in how technology could change AEC for the better. And eventually that led me to Autodesk, where I held a variety of positions there, finally, ending up first as the director of product management and then the director of product strategy for the new AEC generative design group. So I'm largely responsible for Revit during a certain number of years, so you're welcome, and I'm sorry. And now, I'm involved in a company called Hyper that I founded with Ian Keogh in 2018. And since today's topic is IA, I'm just going to show, a couple of things that we've done. We're an open cloud platform where people can combine their own components to create AEC applications, but we've done 2 AI projects. One with Obayashi and the Stanford Research Institute, where we can generate real 3D facades from example photographs. The 3 entities have a joint patent application on this in the US and Singapore now. And something that a lot of people are familiar with now because it's been on the cover of AEC magazine, are text to BIM. And the interesting thing about these 2 projects of, using imagery and then using text to generate building components is that the first one uses a machine learning technique and the second one uses a large language model. And there are inherent differences in those approaches and where you should apply them, and we'll probably talk about that today. Over to you, David.
Perfect. Thank you, Anthony. Next, we will introduce Aaron Szymanski of Augmenta. Aaron?
Hey everyone, so let me just share my screen here. All right, so I'm going to introduce myself very quickly and then we'll talk a little bit about Augmenta, what we're doing. So my name is Aaron Szymanski. I'm one of the co-founders and the head of product at Augmenta. Unlike Anthony, my background is not sort of in the world of construction. I originally studied industrial design. I worked at BlackBerry designing phones and tablets and things like that for quite a long time. But my intersection with AEC in general really started when I worked with our CEO and fellow co-founder Francesco Iorio, who was the director of computational research at Autodesk. So there we worked on this project, basically developing what today Autodesk markets as generative design. And we created Augmenta to take some of the ideas that were developed there and to really apply them to opportunities we saw in the world of construction. So what we're doing is we are building what we think is this new generation of design tooling for the industry. And what we're trying to do is automate, using AI and related methods, the design of those core building systems. So the things that are really engineered, that are behind the drywall, that drive the cost and complexity of building projects. And our first product is in the electrical space. So we have a long-term vision that we're working towards where we really can automate the design of MEP, of structural systems, not just independently, but concurrently. But right now we're focused on electrical. We've been working very closely with Interstates. We've got Josh from Interstates on the call as well to provide sort of his angle on that partnership. But really our focus is on taking really what today is that contractor detailed design workflow and really accelerating that. So taking something that takes weeks or months to do and cutting that down to just a couple of hours. And by doing so, really sort of fundamentally changing the way that design exists and is used and is sort of a bottleneck today inside these types of organizations and in the industry at large. So maybe later, today we can talk a bit more about what we're working on, but really what we're doing is we are taking in the requirements of a system and we are producing fully detailed designs that are code compliant that you can build and procure off of and so on. All right, back to you.
Perfect, thank you, Aaron. And finally, we want to introduce Elijah Coley with Dusty Robotics. Elijah?
Thank you, David. Wait for my screen to pop up here. My name is Elijah Coley. I am the VDC manager with Dusty Robotics. My background is also in architecture with a focus in sustainability. While I was working in one of my first roles at Malum Architects in Seattle, Washington, I felt a little bit limited by the tech adoption of the AEC industry and started to make my jump into a more tech-focused area, which leads me to Dusty Robotics. At Dusty Robotics, we really are entering the AI space through automation and robotics and attempting to find a way to really leverage the BIM models and the work that our architects and detailers are doing in the office and working to provide that in an accurate way on site. So our real product here is the field printer, which helps to translate the digital model to actual printed layout on the job site. We're able to extract more information from a BIM model, more than just the kind of typical layout that we see on job sites today. We're able to communicate this to our installers and everyone else on the job site to make both a more accurate and faster build process. So you can reach us at dustyrobotics.com, VDC at dustyrobotics.com will get you straight to me. So happy to be here. Thanks, David.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. As well as our technology panelists, we're also joined today by 3 industry experts. First up, we have Luther Lampkin with RG Construction. Luther? Luther, you may be on mute.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Luther Lampkin, and my background originally is from architecture as well. I work for RG Construction, which is a drywall company that is leveraging BIM, and I wanted to also leverage AI, companies like Hypar, to better facilitate a lot of the information that we do. And so for us here at RG Construction, what we're doing is we're leveraging the model from design all the way to construction throughout the phases for optimization as much as we can. And our goal for utilizing AI is to go and look from the analytical data standpoint as the model iterations are happening in real time to be able to see what's causing the changes throughout the design so we can construct a better building towards the end as we're modeling and framing and using different ways to kind of go through from a target value approach to estimating virtual mock-ups to even doing cost estimation while we're actually starting the process, going through utilizing different platforms while we're going through the process of the different iterations to the field to go through using mobile technology, reality capture, laser scanning, and then also to fabrication to where we go actually to shop drawing aspect of it. And then we go take the parts and pieces and we do modular stacking and pre-built modularization all the way through the process. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Luther. Next up, we have Josh Gillespie with Interstates.
Hello. Yeah, Josh Gillespie. I work with Interstates. Our director of BIM and VDC. I've been working a fair amount on our strategy here lately. Interstates are a turnkey electrical systems provider. We provide engineering, design, construction, automation, as well as even OTIS type services. I've been working with Augmenta and their team for the last couple of years here on our electrical generative design project, and look forward to the rest of the conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. And last but by no means least, we have Josh DiStefano with DPR.
Hello, everyone. Josh DiStefano with DPR Construction. Hopefully my audio is working well. Yeah, so a little bit about DPR. DPR is a national commercial general contractor. We specify, or rather focus in specific core markets like higher education, healthcare, advanced tech, life sciences, things like that. We look at a lot of different parts of the supply chain, which has brought us into leveraging virtual design and construction, doing prefab, self-performing a lot of different work, a lot of different trades. A lot of our workforce is made up of crafts folks and people in the trades. And I've been with DPR for about 10 years, but throughout my career, which has been a while, since about 2001, I've had roles in all different areas of the business, from being a CAD person, connecting to the dots, to project management, and I spent a lot of time in the virtual design and construction space, led me into reality capture, did a lot with the DPR to develop our strategies around those things. And then in the last couple years, I've moved to support innovation by joining the corporate innovation team at DPR, which takes a look at how we test and nurture and sort of influence our use of technology from in really the early stages, from sort of discovery to determining whether or not it's ready for scale. So yeah, I've gotten exposure to a lot of different construction technologies, and just, yeah, super excited to hear what everybody's got to talk about today. There's a couple that we're familiar with and have worked with a lot. And there's some new stuff on here, so I'm really interested to see how this goes. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so now we know the players. Let's get started. Our format will be, we'll ask the questions and we're going to go around the panel in order they were introduced. Each member, we're going to keep about 1 minute to an answer. So we've got a few questions and we know time's precious here. So our first question is, why AI now, and what is the value? Anthony, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I think, why now is because the means to approach AI workflows have gotten so democratized that it's, the barrier to entry is extremely low for anybody to experiment. And, like any kind of experimentation in software, there is always a gap between, experimentation and commercialization that can be, quite large. However, I think what we're also seeing is the variety of AI methodologies that are available to be applied to different types of problems also help. And I think the value that we're now seeing is this ability to perhaps, and we'll get into this later, I suppose, perhaps take a lot of the digital data that's been generated and start turning them into profitable inferences inside the market. Now, the benefit of things like ChatGPT, of course, is that they're drawing on huge language
10
models.
seconds.
Sure, they're huge language models that are more general, and the potential is there to draw on more specific models related to our industry to have more specific answers.
Okay, Aaron, let's move on to you.
All right, so I think Anthony summarized it really well, especially the why from the technology side. I think from the value side, it's really at the most million-foot level. AI has this ability to automate or replicate or ideally extend things that human beings are really good at, right? So that can be analyzing data, making sense of data, but also creating new concepts. And I think that's what's really generated all the excitement when we look at ChatGPT and Midjourney and things like that. And then you can apply that in different ways, right? So that's kind of what each of these different tool makers that you see on this call and also in sort of the broader AEC world are doing. And we can dive into that. I think the other thing is that there's sort of an opening for it in construction, right? So these technologies are much more accessible. Compute is much cheaper. So now you can start to apply it. And in construction, construction is facing a ton of pressure, right? So there's a lot of challenges around schedules, around risk, around complexity. And it just so happens that now these are problems that may be the right ones for AI to solve for, right? So it's sort of well poised to solve for that. So there's sort of this nice convergence of factors inside and outside that are sort of coming together. And I think that's why we're seeing it today.
Perfect. Elijah, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to hit on a little bit of what Aaron talked about at the end there. We're still recovering from really high material costs, schedules compressing more than ever. And I think, this is a perfect spot for automation to jump in and sort of help close the gap. And, in a world where you can't make mistakes as much, there's really no time for that. We're looking to leverage AI and automation to actually get what's been worked on inside the office straight onto our job site. You get more done with less. It's more accurate. It's a little bit faster. So being able to use the kind of expertise we have in the office and make sure that makes it onto the job site, I think that's a perfect, high value reason to use AI.
Perfect. Thank you. Luther, how about you?
For me, I go by the saying, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And so we should always be trying, right? So for me, that AI presents a opportunity to finally leverage the I and BIM efficiently, which is information. Right now, we've had a lot of data gaps and really trying to curate that data, and we need some help in trying to really corral that data and have some good translations, because to me, more than anything that we're doing is that information is really what we need to be able to corral to really get the true value into the digital aspect to transfer it to the field. And so if we have some type of assistance in that measure, I think all for it. I think we got to be careful on how we implement it, but I definitely think that the opportunity is right. I think the technology is there. It's just we have to be strategic on the application.
Super. Thanks. Josh Gillespie, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the guys have summed it up really well, but the technology is there. The construction industry needs a disruption. They need a change. We've just got to start doing things a little bit different so we can provide more value to our clients and customers. The value that it brings that we're looking at is really removing the non-value added time in our work process or workflow, the stuff that you just have to do to get to the next step. there's rules, there's standards, there's processes built around that stuff already. The client's not really paying for that part of it. Let's let the AI system or the machine part of it take a lot of that information, that data, plug it through, and kick us some options, and then let us focus on the value-added side of the industry.
Super. Thanks, Josh. And Josh D.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I think the time is now because Stuart talked about this in the very beginning. This is not new technology. AI is not new. Even the generative AI stuff that we're talking about was developed in like 2017. We're just getting around to figuring out how to use it. And I think what we're starting to understand as an industry is, one, the existential threat that we've got to get better at what we do in all aspects, because we have a lot more to do than there are people that want to do it. And it's more complicated. And if we can give them better tools, we can get more done. Like it just makes a whole lot more sense to try and go that direction. And these are the options we have. And we've been digitizing construction for a long time. And we have a lot of data on the VDC side, and we're getting data on the reality capture side. And what we're realizing, which we kind of knew would happen, is we would have a whole bunch of data. What are we going to do with all that data? And that's where we can sort of put, our knowledge into AI and machine learning and other models that say, all right, like help me sift through this stuff and make sense of it and provide better insights. And I think we're all starting to sort of realize that, like, oh, okay, this is what we can use it for. This is what standardization helps us with, is be able to leverage these tools and, integrate and all that kind of stuff. So now's a great time. It's the time to do it.
Love it. That was great. Thanks for that, guys. Next question. Can each of you provide some example use cases of AI you have seen or are looking into? So first up, Anthony.
I think I talked a little bit about a couple of examples that we've looked at, but to start with those, one, the customer's actual desire from Obayashi was, when they're getting their office towers approved that they're building in Tokyo on spec, one of the parts of the approval process is they want to show how the building fits into the context. So they came to us and said, what we would like to do is go around the area and take pictures of buildings nearby and show how it could fit well into the context to the approving authority. So, that was a fairly, straightforward use case there. I think, what we added to that was turning that into a real 3D facade that could be quantified and not just using imagery. And, in the second case, which is more kind of us working on spec, we saw the potential of Chat GPT. And rather than doing something like, let's feed 200,000 buildings into an ML to learn architecture, we instead basically overlaid a natural language input on procedural generative design components. So that way, it's still a constrained space through procedure, but it remains something that you can sort of interact with almost as if you were yourself a client. And we think that kind of hybrid approach is going to be very fruitful in the future and can apply to a lot of different things, even down to, say, detailing steel.
Thank you, Anthony. That was great. Aaron?
Yeah, sure. So I can talk a bit more about what we're working on. So right now our focus is on our first product, which automates that electrical detailed design process. So at a very high level, from a workflow perspective, what it does is you input in your requirements. So there's spatial requirements, as in what is the site that I'm generating within, what are the locations of the equipment I need to connect, what are all of the specifications I need to abide by. So these might be things that appear in a regional code variation. It could be specific catalogs of parts and components, spacing rules, clearance rules, grouping rules, and so on. Basically, you set up front a definition of the problem that you want the system to solve for, and then in sort of classic generative design fashion, it generates a number of solutions for then you to go and review. And really the problem that we were solving for, and Josh can talk to this a little bit more as well, is that is an extraordinarily long and time-consuming process to go through today that has to be done over and over every time there's a massive change in that coordination process. So we're trying to compress that.
That's great. Thank you, Aaron. Elijah?
Yeah, I think for us, it's really automating the construction site. With the use of robotics, you can essentially guarantee that the model, that your detailers have worked on and hopefully coordinated as well as possible is what actually makes it to the job site, right? When you give all that information to a robot or an AI, you're able to interpret that data all using the same coordinate system, the same, source of truth, if you will, and making sure that that actually hits the job site. We see a lot of issues where things just don't match up. Maybe someone shifted something, right? But using this system is able to actually lay that out on the ground and be able to check that in the real world scale before you actually build it, right? So you take that step out. You're no longer building off of something that you hope is right. It's right.
Great. Thank you, Elijah. Luther.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So for us, we're actually in conjunction working with a couple of guys already on the actual call itself. So we're actually utilizing Dusty because we're a drywall contractor. So we're trying to utilize that digital layout to make sure that we're laying out the walls and everything. And not just for us, for all the trades all at one time. For a combined layout. So that's one way that we're looking way to automate the process. The other one is we're using a software called Speckle, and which that is an AI search engine that we're utilizing to use as queries to be able to just type in the text that we're looking for and be able to look at the different elements and objects within the Revit models to be able to query certain elements. And then last but not least, we're also looking and working with Hypar to be able to figure out how we can digitally use AI for counts and framing, and what's the smart way to be able to utilize those components for prefab. So all those different things that we're already trying to do. And then last but not least, we use another software called Cupix for reality capture to be able to analyze a lot of our laser scan data in the field for existing conditions for that aspect of it. So those are the ways right now that we're actively utilizing or trying to utilize AI in those areas and platforms for our business.
Thank you, Luther. Josh Gillespie.
Yeah, so we're working with Augmenta on the electrical design system here. And that's a lot around our raceway design. So it's sizing, routing, and grouping all of our electrical motors and instrumentation devices, that kind of stuff. It's utilizing the BIM model and utilizing it whatever level of detail it may be at that time. So we're using that from estimating all the way through our final design, and really kind of changing that client experience. It's kicking out at several options. We might pick the 3 or 4 or whatever that we're looking for, and then we want to start taking that to our clients, saying, hey, here's a few options. We have cost and labor and other data tied to it. Here's one that's a little bit more expensive. Here's one that can get executed a little bit faster. Really, what are your priorities? So take that non-value added time that it takes to group and size and route that stuff, and fast forward that to the point at which we can start interacting with our clients and get better designs, better decisions, more bought in, that kind of stuff.
That's great. Thank you, Josh. Josh, Steve.
Yeah, we're still talking about use cases, right? I think we've shown how many there are. There are so many different use cases, and I was curious if we were going to get to one that I had on my list. And the one that I was thinking of was automating like movement on construction sites. So in our case right now, we're experimenting with some that do 360 photo capture. Essentially, imagine a drone like walking robot being able to navigate through the site, which sounds like something we've seen with Spot, but imagine it fully autonomous, like not somebody doesn't have to babysit it. It just walks around and does what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't run into things. And so we're testing that and seeing like, oh, that's actually possible. But we've done that. We've done quality control for projects as we're going. We're capturing either 360 photo camera data or LiDAR scans and comparing that to the model. And there's some AI components that are checking essentially how far off those are and seeing whether or not things are in tolerance. And I think we're just scratching the surface to what we could get into when all of these problems that we can solve with AI start to sort of stack on top of each other. Like, oh, we've solved the navigation issue, and we've solved this, and we've solved that, and all of a sudden things start to get exponentially that much better because we've combined a couple different things. So I think we're just getting to scratching the surface, and there's a lot more use cases we'll find out about.
Super, great input, gentlemen. So a question that comes up, how can we as an industry build trust in AI? Anthony, I'll let you go first.
Sometimes I like to say, how as an industry can we build up trust in our interns? Because, AI in a lot of contexts acts as your fastest and stupidest intern you've ever had. And so, how we do that is, professional backstops, right? I think, just like with a person, who's new to the industry, we're checking their work, we're correcting it, we're feeding back those corrections to that person. It's really not a different process to a machine learning model, as long as you can do that in some adroit fashion that is not too time consumptive. And so I think, what we're going to see is a bunch of essentially, interns on the market, right, who are infinitely replicable. And then gradually they are going to turn into respected professionals on their own. And those respected professionals might be, working for one firm because that firm has taught it that firm's way of accomplishing something. And so they become very, very tied to that art and procedure in that organization. So I think, we don't need to necessarily look at this as a totally different idea than what we already deal with in the industry and our sort of, veteran, journeyman apprentice system.
Okay, great analogy there. Aaron?
So I agree fully with Anthony. I'm going to sort of take a spin on it from the tool developer side. So, one of the big challenges is that these machine learning models, and particularly purely data-driven approaches, are very much a black box, right? So it's very hard to, or very difficult or impossible in some cases, to really guarantee that you're getting consistent or correct output when it's putting something out. And this is okay for some applications like conceptual design and so on. But when we start getting into the engineering end of the workflow, that becomes a real issue. So there's a number of ways we can solve it on the technology side, but I totally agree that from a workflow perspective, the more explainable the system can be, the better. People have to be able to go in and inspect and understand why was this decision made, and then to be able to go in and override that. And then it's going to be this long feedback process between industry and the people making these tools until we get to the point where it's mature enough, and that's not happening. That will be inside the company and sort of more broadly across the industry. But the only thing I would sort of finish off with is that, this has been done before, right? So if you think about other industries like the semiconductor industry, chips are designed using systems like this. No one is manually verifying the routing of a chip, before it's being produced. They have trust in the tools built by firms like Cadence. We will be able to get there. It took a long time, but it is a future that, is very much achievable.
Super. Elijah?
Yeah, so my team, the VDC team at Dusty Robotics, we sit in the customer success sector. So for us, we build trust through high touch service. People, besides people on the call, are generally unfamiliar with AI and the technology that we use. So, that can block adoption in a lot of ways. We work with our customers every step of the way, and we're able to ensure good service and a good experience for first-time AI users. And then once we get on site, the accuracy actually speaks for itself. We use coordination methods with the teams in the office to make sure that field teams and detailing teams both know what's going to be put on site. And then, when that result matches, we can make evangelists out of non-believers. And that really builds trust in the system, and they want to use us over and over again.
Super. Luther?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, which kind of sounds funny when we talking about AI, right? But I believe that if you can solve a problem that the client has through whatever apparatus, in this one AI, but they can understand how it got solved, and it's a predictable outcome, then I think that's what we're looking for. And I think that's kind of the answer to the question is, hey, can we predict the predictable outcome even though we're using AI to solve a problem? And I think the answer is yes. I think we just have to be strategic. Just like, if you're using Chat GPT, I mean, you could, if your prompt is wrong, then it's whatever you input is what your output is. So I think there's the strategic advantage of understanding what you want to get out of AI strategically. And that way you can kind of be able to evaluate along the way. So you're building that confidence and that trust in the client that it's delivering the outputs that it wants, because it is a journey. Everything's not going to just be one thing and that's it. I think if we understand that AI is a journey, just like it's been in any other industry, I think then we can really understand holistically how well it can help us, but we can't just be too far into the weeds without understanding the overall goal of what we're trying to do.
Okay, Josh Gillespie.
Yeah, to build trust in AI, ultimately you just have to get started. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of scarcity in the unknown. You got to get started. That's going to help start to build that. And it's going to be through those experiences. We're going to try some things. The intern example is awesome because, first intern you work with, definitely not going to be the best experience you've had. But the more you work with interns, the more you do there, it gets a whole lot easier, a whole lot simpler, and you kind of find your way. I think there's a lot of things that people don't understand about AI. It's not this magic wand that we're going to wave and it's going to take care of all of our problems. It's just not going to be the way it is. We're going to work along with it. It's another tool in your tool belt. How you utilize that tool and how that moves forward is really going to build that trust. The engineers working with it, the designers working with it, all the way through the value stream.
That's basically what I was going to say right there. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say was that we kind of have to stop thinking of it as new and look at it as a new tool. We have a lot of tools. The internet in construction is still fairly new. Smartphones are still if we look at how long our industry has had these kinds of things and been adapting to these things, we're still adapting to a lot of this stuff. We just got to be okay with that and go, okay, cool. How do we use this one, right? How does this fit? Where does this fit in the tool belt? And how does it help us move forward and be more productive and safer? And, all of the things that we, think it can do. And how do we get it to do that? And just like Josh said, we got to start. We got to try it. We got to kick the tires, and we got to start thinking of it as another tool, not a new thing that we don't understand, and we'll leverage when it gets forced upon us. I just, it fits in there. We know that, and there's a lot of data to be crunched, so it just makes sense. We've got to try it out, and like I said earlier, it's not new. It's been embedded in some of our tools, so we may be using it and not even realizing it, and now there's better versions of it. So time to take the next step, in my opinion.
Thank you, Josh. That was great. So can you guys share some lessons learned around the use cases that you described earlier? Anthony, anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say one, don't try to use it as the only tool in your toolbox. There are a lot of problems that can be solved a lot more easily. But I pretty much have a steady conversation with customers about AI when, they say, hey, we have all this data, could you use AI? And I say, okay, so we could take all your data and we could normalize it. We could run through machine learning. We can infer how you do things, or you could just tell us. So, it's very important that if the knowledge is already there and you can record it and automate it, go ahead and do that. Where you really want to apply AI is where that is not intuitively obvious or easily implementable. Because we've seen, conversations with engineers where we'll ask them how they do something and we think it's a very easy question and they stare off into the distance because they know how they do it and they have no idea how to explain it. And those kind of things might be a candidate, but it's good to be very cautious because it can be very time consumptive and you want to apply it where it's really going to help.
Thank you, Anthony. That was great. Aaron, let's hear from you.
Yeah, sure. So I really like Anthony's point. I think that there's this idea we can just dump in all of our data and just get, new versions of X out, and it's going to be that simple, which is clearly not the case. I'll give another perspective from, again, the perspective of sort of a tool maker. And this will sound obvious to everyone on the call, but you have to design these solutions with the people who are going to be using them. And I call that out because if you really think about it, a lot of the expertise that's going to be developing machine learning tools is not from construction, right? It's not, they're coming from computational research or machine learning backgrounds. And so there's this really big gap between their expertise and the expertise that you need to really be able to operate at a very sophisticated level in construction. And so this is sort of a reminder for anyone on the call who is maybe more on the software side, maybe you're a startup, you really have to partner and work very, very closely with the people who are actually going to use these tools day to day, because there aren't really that many quick wins in construction. I think everyone can acknowledge that. And so it really takes a lot of time and really obsessing with and developing an understanding of how it's actually going to work and how those types of decisions are made. When an engineer is staring off into space, what are they thinking about? What are the factors they're considering? Because you probably have to be able to account for all of those to have your system produce something that's actually useful and not just an interesting, tech demo. So,
Thank you, Aaron. Elijah?
Yeah, thanks. I would say the biggest lesson learned is that transparency garners respect and patience. We spend a lot of time walking people through the technology and how it works. And I think that helps kind of ease the nerves of getting into AI. I'll tell a quick story. We were working with a large company that was doing kind of automation for distribution centers. And we get on site, we're printing something on the ground. Everyone kind of stops. They think it's in the wrong spot, right? Of course, my team goes back. We start to look at the drawings, make sure everything's good. We realize that what we got is what we printed. And internally, the customer looks at all of their stuff and they realize, oh, there's a new revision we never sent to them. So they go back, they check everything. They realize that if they built it that way, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars in change orders, things like that. And they really started to respect the fact that what they gave was what got printed on site. And so that was a really quick way for us to gain respect and the trust of that customer. And they signed a much larger deal with many more robots and many more sites. And I think that experience for them and us being transparent and saying, we're going to look at this too and make sure it wasn't us, make sure we're using the technology in the right way. I think that really built up a lot of respect for us. So I would just say keep it transparent. Still working out the kinks with AI and stuff like that. So.
Thanks, Elijah. Luther?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is managing expectations. Managing expectations because you want to be honest with the client of what they're going to be getting, and not just, my biggest thing is not just doing a sales pitch. So managing expectations in small increments to really, really build on wins so you can build trust for a long-term relationship as opposed to just something that's proof. Here's something new. And then my second one would be just like we were just talking earlier, is leverage people who have experience, because this type of machine learning versus somebody who also is in this industry, in the space, who does this. One of the people that we utilize a lot for this is Evolve Labs and this type of atmosphere. So I understand that they already have that background, and then also leveraging AI at the same time. And so when you put those two things together, then you now have a more focused product. So when you're trying to start solving problems, you can kind of bring in people like that can help you streamline you along the way, as opposed to trying to go this journey by yourself. So if you're trying to go down this journey, I think leveraging knowledge and collaborating to see what people who already have that experience on both sides of the spectrum coming together would lead you in more of a more harmonious path. And just so that's my biggest thing from a lessons learned perspective.
Thank you, Luther. Josh Gillespie?
Yeah, so I'll talk about my experience here as we've been working with Augmento over the last few years with AI and how that works. And Anthony, there's been many a times I've been that guy staring off into the distance trying to figure out how I'm going to explain something. A lot of stuff you just do naturally. It is difficult to explain. So you really need to sit down and think about that. And why are we doing what we do? Because there's even some things built into what we do that we might not necessarily need to do the same way. It's just that's the way we've been doing it. So you got to think through a number of those things as you're moving through this process. Standards and processes help dramatically. If you have your standards figured out and you know where you're standardized and you're clear on that, that gets you moving forward a lot faster right away. The other thing I would say is at the size of what you want to bite something off or pick something out to move into, make sure you're not going to be able to do everything. So you try to right size it the best way you can, but you also want to size it in a way that it is going to make a difference for your people and the people that are working with that tool, so that it gets them excited and engaged and brings, opens that up more of their eyes. They're going to start bringing more ideas to you about where the next step should be or how you should, how we can keep moving forward with this stuff.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Josh D.
Yeah, I think one more thing that I would add is that find your clients. Like, it's not so much a lesson learned, but like, I'll just say that we have learned that when we have clients that are really interested in, finding in testing new things or learning stuff about, new tech, we have a much better execution of it. So, I'm sure we've all got at least a few of them that are sort of willing to support, trying things out and, saying, hey, look, we've got a mutual problem. Let's figure out how to solve this. And maybe this, new piece of tech or whatever can help us do that, because that's what it was made for.
Great. So since you all provide interesting perspectives, what do you feel are the future potentials or barriers to AI, human and or technology? Anthony?
When I think about the potential, I always think about William Gibson's quote, the future's already here, it's just unevenly distributed. And one of the things that always has bothered me about construction, technology, et cetera, is that it is unevenly distributed around the world. And there's a lot of folks who could quickly benefit from knowing how to do things better, who have absolutely no access to professional help and never will because of the economics around professionalism. Now we have a chance to start distributing that expertise to anyone who needs it at any time. And I think, the dream that I have and why I felt finally compelled that, oh God, I have to help found a company, is that we really want to make it easier, and we should all have this goal to make a really good decision much, much easier than making a really bad decision. And right now it's the reverse. We've got like a small set of really good decisions and an infinite way of making everything worse. So somehow we have to use the machines to narrow down our choices into that set for everybody on Earth so that they can get access to the expertise they need for a better built environment. Because look, we all can see it's getting challenged every day now, and we've got a lot to do.
Thank you. Aaron?
So the fundamental promise of AI and applying it to construction, I think, and considering where we're focused, is that every sort of tedious or time-consuming aspect of the design and planning process can be fundamentally sort of compressed. And this is not just about, saving time and saving money and things like that, but it really changes the way we think about how buildings and the built environment is designed in the first place, right? If you at any point can answer any sort of design question you have at the level of detail down to the individual nut and bolt, and you know exactly how that thing is going to perform, how it's going to be built, even at the napkin sketch level, that changes how you design that building, right? Now we can actually optimize our buildings. We can really design these things for performance because we know that if we lay it up this way or we construct it this way, here's how it's actually going to get built, how everything's going to fit, how it's going to perform now and in 50 years. So it's this level of insight that today is impossible to have, that only appears at the end of a construction process, that we want to bring to the very beginning. And that's, I think, the real sort of promise of these technologies.
Perfect. Thank you. Elijah?
Yeah, I think the real barrier to any of this is adoption. It really is. I think, we really need to start getting some more people just in the room thinking about this. I think at Dusty, we're really excited about the collaboration, the possibilities of people working with AI more, bringing things like AR into the space, linking that with data that we print on the job site. I think being able to kind of flip the status quo of how the construction industry currently operates will only unleash, infinite possibilities. We're a super rigid industry. BIM was and still is being adopted slowly. Not every architecture firm uses BIM models, but as soon as we can get more people into the space, I think we'll start to see people start to move through the whole process, right? The thought makers, the architects, the people with the designs are going to be part of that construction process even more, and making sure that the actual thing that they thought is what actually gets built. So I think right now we just need to move past the fear and just kind of dive in head first.
Perfect. Luther.
Mine's a lot more simple than that. We need to get more millennials at the top of the companies that are more advantageous to adoption. I feel like a lot of the strategies that we have are pretty much lockstep with traditional values. And if you don't have a risk reward mindset, that I don't think you're going to move forward, because the way technology moves is by the time you adopt, it's already over and it's already old. You know what I mean? I think the speed that we're talking about adopting something and making it efficient really, really has to adjust for the times that we're talking about. And so I think of the fact that if we can start to have people like us who are on the call at the top of the food chain in some of these companies, or start building our own companies, or the people who are watching to really, really step out and build your companies based upon an idea that we can do better. I think that'll be more. We see the money's there. We see that the investment is there. I think we just need more thought leaders to come into the process and challenge the status quo, so we can lift up a rising tide, so all the boats can rise. Right now, we're still kind of muddy in the waters.
Perfect. Josh Gillespie.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of drastic potentials here. Looking at the people side of it, just removing that monotonous work. We start our designs out with generic materials, then have to go through and transition all that to fabrication materials that are more detailed. We do that because of our current processes and systems. Using AI, we can design the first time around with the right parts and pieces. That just starts to make everybody's day more enjoyable. I'm not having to do the stuff that just drags on and on and on. I can enjoy my work day and do more of that higher value added activity. And then I'm going to compare the AI to data. You've got leaders that can use data in good ways. And when they use it in good ways with teams, the teams want more data. You have leaders that can use data as a whipping tool in bad ways. Why aren't you doing this? Or this isn't hitting here. And those teams and people don't want it. AI is going to be the same way. You got to use it in a good way. How can we advance the industry? How can we change the industry and do better than what we're doing now?
Great. Josh Gistavani?
Yeah, that's good stuff. I think there's a couple barriers. I think we got to stop waiting for cost change to get cheaper. I think to that adoption point, like we're sort of like, oh well, we'll just kind of this works and this is supporting our business. We'll change when it's cheaper. I feel it's the like back of the mind mantra. Nobody's saying that out loud because it is silly, but we have the ability to drive change. I think that more than we realize. And because I kind of agree with you, Luther, like we need folks that are open-minded, whatever they are, if they're from a particular generation or whatever. I don't think it matters, but I agree with the point. I just think, it's that open-mindedness, we talk about other areas that we've adopted different things like cordless tools and things like that. It takes a long time, but you got to get past, what it is now and the things you don't like about it now to get to the better thing. And we look at it now and go, oh, well, there's no way we would go back to corded tools, from 20 years ago. Those things sucked. But at the time, there was people that were fighting that. And we've got to not lose sight of that history and go, okay, well, remember when we were dumb and we said that, these were better and those were never going to be as good and we were never going to get those? Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff like that now. And, we've got to maybe look at not calling it, automating someone's work, but like being able to, for them to do more, again, giving them a better tool. So there's a lot of different barriers. The other one that I wanted to make sure I talked about was data security and ownership. Like, we've talked a lot about data, and this is becoming a barrier. Like, we're not just talking about project data. Sometimes we're talking about, historical data or somebody's, or it could be project data, but we're working with, companies that are very strict with their data, and they don't, see the need for them to, give you their project data and to do a machine learning. So I think there's some barriers there that we still got to work out from contracts standpoint, but there's obviously a handful of them that you guys talked about as well, but those are some ones I wanted to bring up.
I think we have a whole series of follow-on webinars for this group to do. Great stuff, team. We have some questions, more than unfortunately we have time to go through from our attendees. So what I thought I would do is pick a panelist and ask you the question and then just keep moving through some of the questions so we can get as many done as possible. So Josh D, you're on a roll. Is your company, or are you aware of any AI that's being used in proposal development? Project pursuit.
Ooh, proposal development. I know we've dabbled a little bit in just some write-up material type stuff, but nothing too complex that I've heard about. Doesn't mean we're not doing it, just hasn't trickled up to the team and made the rounds. But we have dabbled in leveraging it, to explain a concept, help us, because a lot of us are engineers too, and we're like, how do I explain this? I obviously tend to be long-winded, right? So not everybody's into that when you're explaining stuff. So that stuff like that can help. And I think that's, again, goes back to looking at it as a tool and going, hey, can I put a solid draft together? Personally, I'm a better editor than I am a draft, a copywriter. So it works well for me. Don't know anything specifically about RFPs, but I know there's a lot of folks dabbling with it. So wouldn't surprise me.
All right, next one's to Luther. Luther, projects involve lots of different companies. How can technology be used when the company information is siloed?
Well, I think the first barrier that you're going to have to figure out is what commonalities of the data can be transferable. Are they using a cloud platform that the information can be, transferred? The data that they're using, is there any way from a BIM model perspective that they can use any type of smart parameters that can be leveraged through other trades for different things? So I think that there has to be a balance of communication, what the end aim is, and for what they're looking to do, and then what other trades are they going to need to help facilitate that information.
Thank you, sir. All right, I've got to ask this one to a non-industry expert. This one's going to go to Anthony. Are there any tools which can generate construction documents automatically from Revit models? Anthony.
Yeah, no. Someone was actually asking that, and I was answering in the feed. But I saw a really nice presentation from SWAP, SWAPP, at Next Build a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with how far they've gotten so far, which I would not have expected. So, and they really are concentrating on condocs and. Yeah, I have a look. I think they're doing some really interesting work over there.
Great, thank you, sir. All right, last question, just because of time, but we've talked a lot about different technologies, but ChatGPT started and kind of ran through the conversation. Josh Gillespie, any thoughts on the free version versus the paid for version, the pros, the cons? Any thoughts?
I'm not going to be able to get real detailed into the free versus the paid. We're in the process really of doing some evaluations and figuring out really where it fits for interstates and how we can utilize that a little bit differently. So I will probably open it up if anybody else on the panel has some experience or thoughts to share. Go for it.
And if not, it's okay. We're up with time, so we'll maybe leave that one for another day. All right, David, over to you for some takeaways.
Yeah, so we should kind of review a couple things here that we thought were kind of takeaways from here. So one thing, why AI now? I think one thing is construction is always behind on technology. We need to be ready for this. We need to step up to the plate. It definitely provides value when used properly, and everyone needs to start using it. I think that's evidence that you just gotta go for it. You're gonna learn. Use cases in design. AI can improve design process by automating repetitive tasks, generating design alternatives, and optimizing designs based on specific criteria. It can also further assist architects and engineers in exploring innovative design possibilities and quickly evaluating their feasibility. On the construction side, AI can easily be used for construction operations such as robotics and automation. You're hearing about that and seeing it in action today. Advancing sensing technologies and real-time monitoring of systems. Along with also, you could optimizing construction schedules, resource allocation, logistics management, just everything to help improve productivity. The other thing is data-driven decision-making these days. With the improved use of data collection, integration, and analysis, AI applications can use algorithms that can process large volumes of data to provide valuable insights, identify patterns, and support decision-making processes. We talked a little about trust, and part of it, users need to learn how to do the prompt engineering, how to properly ask questions for AI. The data privacy, ethics, ownership was talked about, and the need for the human expertise, how to handle this needed AI technology. And then the importance you're going to have to start upskilling and reskilling the workforce to take advantage of AI. One of the quotes, basically, AI isn't going to take your job anytime soon. But like any tool, the person who knows how to leverage it will take your job. So kind of the lessons learned we saw here is, it can be used to fix small and large processes to increase efficiency. But like any other tool, we need to learn how to use it with all our other tools. The transformative potential of AI in design construction is endless, and we encourage you and your companies to further explore the use of AI technologies.
Thank you, David.
I'll just finish up. So thanks again for our panel for participating. Thanks again to our attendees. Thanks to John Tauchi, our production manager, for herding all the cats. Please remember this is a webinar, and all the great topics will be on the BIMForum website, where you can also sign up for future webinars on the site. Thank you, Stuart, for being a great co-host.
You're very welcome. Thanks for everybody participating on the chat today, the discussion. I think my one quote, Anthony, I'm gonna take it and use it. AI is like an entry-level intern, but infinitely replicable. I think that's a great way of looking at it. I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion today. Look forward to more of these in the upcoming months. Thank you, everybody.